And on a happier note, tonight, 29 years after Beatlemania blitzed New Zealand, Paul McCartney's back. He's here for a single show as part of a world tour. Dylan Tate caught up with him at Auckland Airport just a short time ago.
He's going to come over. Oh, here he is. How are you? How are you? Nice to see you. Yeah, great. Good to see you. Linda. You're well. Going all right, Brian? All right, son, yeah.
Brian,
You got the family with you? Brought them all, yeah. Brought them all. Did you get a new shirt? Yeah, I've got a new shirt. I was having I wanted yours after last time we met. Talk to the others. How you doing? Yeah, I remember you. I remember you, third row, over on the side. Brilliant. She's come again. Favourite. Yeah. Take it easy, mate. We'll see you tomorrow. See you tomorrow. Yeah. Do you want to sign up, Paul? Are you going to take a bit of a hold out?
And we hope to have an interview with Linda McCartney tomorrow night here on Prime Time.
An hour ago, Paul McCartney arrived at Auckland Airport in a specially chartered jet. But he'll be joined by three others at his Saturday concert, three women who created headlines when the Beatles played in Wellington nearly 30 years ago.
Will you still need me? Will you still feed me when I'm 64?
They're not 64, but 1964 was a big year for them. They were fourth formers, and it was the year they met the Beatles.
It's been a hard day's night.
When the Beatles finally came to New Zealand, I just couldn't believe it. The Beatles were really here.
It's the first time they've all been together since 64, and the reunion coincides with the Paul McCartney concert in Auckland.
We'd like to thank everybody once again for this great welcome. Thank you.
Beatlemania was raging in New Zealand in 1964. The Beatles were staying at Wellington St George Hotel, and the girls strolled through security to the sanctuary of the Fab Four.
We climbed up the first flight of steps, and then we got the lift from there up to the sixth floor. We got out of the lift at the sixth floor, and there was Ringo Starr. He was saying goodbye to his cousin or some relations that he'd had there visiting him. We couldn't believe it. It was Ringo. Ah. He took us through to his room, not his bedroom, just his room that they'd used before. And he signed our arms, up here on our arms, he signed Ringo Starr. It was fabulous. And then he said he'd sign our autograph books and he'd get the boys to sign them for us as well.
But Winkle, Christine and Annette never saw the other lads from Liverpool.
I can't do a Liverpudlian accent, but he said, oh, you can't see the others because they're in the undies. They're getting changed. And being 14-year-olds, we didn't think it would be suitable for us.
You didn't have any urge to rush in through there?
No urge at all.
The fourth formers were famous, but back at school next day, it was the headmistress's office. They were made to wash off the autographs and narrowly escaped expulsion.
The problem was it was the media. We were 14 years old and very naive, I suppose.
Yes,
and we weren't in school uniform and we really hadn't done anything wrong. It was just circumstances, but of course we said what school we went to and that was the worst thing we could have done.
29 years on, they're together again, and they still feel the same about the Beatles.
Beatlemania, I mean, there's been probably nothing really quite like it since.
Even now, occasionally I listen to an old Beatles record, and I don't go into tears, but I almost do.
It gives you a funny feeling.
It really does.
Yes.
The new Fab Four, Paul and the three girls, will be reunited on Saturday when McCartney plays at Western Springs. But it won't be quite the same ever again. Bob McNeil, 3 National News.
Other people who are into the new material, and the older people are the ones who more go for the sort of nostalgia thing because they were there when Can't Buy Me Love came out, so, or you know, Let It Be or something. So when they hear it, it touches nerves. But the younger kids haven't got that. They're just taking it as songs, and often our new stuff goes down better with the kids. So it's nice to have both, you know. But no, I'm quite happy to have anything that, you know, it goes down well, whether it's old or new, really.
New Zealand, and for many that brings back waves of nostalgia, reviving memories of 1964.
That was when New Zealand was in the grip of Beatlemania. It's hard to believe it now, but the Fab Four, as they called them then, just about brought the country to a standstill.
Everything the Beatles did made headlines, and when some Wellington fourth form girls cracked the security at the St George Hotel, it was considered a scandal. The girls managed to make it to the floor the Beatles were staying on and cornered Ringo Starr. After collecting autographs, the girls found themselves in hot water as their faces were splashed across the front pages of the country's newspapers.
If you're over, welcome to the program. Nice to see you here.
We have three of you here today.
Yes. You two are in Auckland now. It's Christine and Annette, right?
Right. And Winkle on the end.
And Winkle on the end. Still in Wellington, are you? Winkle?
Still in Wellington,
okay.
yes.
Did you actually expect to succeed, or did you? I mean,
I think it just happened, really. We really didn't know if we would get in, but we were going to the early concert. We went, there were thousands outside the St George Hotel, and we really walked up, and actually Winkle...
Who was the ringleader? Whose idea was it?
I think Winkle.
Yes. How did I know it was you, Winkle?
Yeah. You're going to take the blame like that, are you going to take the blame?
No,
okay.
never.
What would you have actually done had you have made it into their rooms?
Got their signatures.
Well, we did. Yes, we did make it
Right into their suite, did you?
Oh, yes.
Oh, did you? Oh, you didn't just meet Ringo in the lift then?
Oh, no.
Oh.
We went into the foyer and thinking we might go to see them. I don't know why we thought that, but we were naive, 14-year-olds. And we actually bumped into Pete Sinclair there, and he said, look, he said, if you want to go and see them, he said, they're on the 6th floor. He said, don't take the lift. There's guards on the lift, go up the steps.
So he's responsible.
So
he's responsible.
Well, yeah, we just went up the steps and there he was.
Yeah.
So
Now, what did your parents think? We've heard about what the school thought. What did your parents think of it? Were they a bit annoyed by it all?
Actually, not that. I think. Well, my parents, the night I got home, they thought, well, that was okay, but not so good the next day when they found out quite so much trouble. I think the small private girls' school, although we really had done nothing wrong. In our minds.
How would you feel if your daughters broke into the bedrooms of Guns N' Roses?
No.
You wouldn't like it?
But
I agree if they broke into the bedrooms, but we didn't go near the bedrooms.
No.
It was a
That was what we
The private
explained.
rooms then of Guns N' Roses.
It was misleading in the paper.
Oh, I see.
Totally.
They said the bedroom, but it actually was a room with beds and things folded up, being used as an interview room. Ringo had been being interviewed with his cousin from Wainui Mart or somewhere.
That's right, yes, that's the one.
She'd just left. The reporter happened to still be there. That's how it really eventuated. And and of course we were just excited. And when they said what school, we said, oh,
You couldn't wait to get your names
I
out
don't
and your
suppose it would
school out.
matter anything now, would it? I don't suppose anybody would bat an eyelid
Not
now,
so
this
much,
sort of thing.
not now.
So have you still continued over the years to be great fans?
Well, I have.
we
yes,
still
yes,
like their
very
music.
much.
So now you must have had everybody had a favourite.
Except me.
Oh, what? That'd be right. Who was your favourite?
John Lennon.
John Lennon?
Every time.
Yeah, George, I think. He was
George.
quiet.
Yep.
And
Chris?
I'm sorry, but Paul, although
Paul.
after meeting Ringo, I must admit, I think I have a scrapbook full of Ringo after that. But it was Paul, actually.
Well, I
And,
think
you're meeting the man tomorrow night.
We are.
I think that shows very good judgment.
Thank you for joining us today.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're over 40, then you'll have no problems recognising the name Little Richard.
In nearly 30 years. He's back for one Auckland concert, bringing with him an environmental message about issues he first came across in the 60s.
He's back, and today's welcome was nothing like the one he received 29 years ago. The McCartney press conference brought a horde of media people to Western Springs, and the star shared his most vivid memory of New Zealand.
The Maori welcome and rubbing noses is hard to forget. It was good fun. Enjoyed it.
Looking nothing like his 50 years, a relaxed McCartney admits he's lucky not to have been a casualty of the 60s like so many of his contemporaries.
We didn't make it till we were all like 18, 19. So we'd had a lot of ordinary life. We'd had enough of it by the time we got famous. You know, we were raring to, number one, get a bit of money, because, you know, none of us had ever seen that.
Today, the McCartneys are environmentalists actively spreading a message of conservation.
And I think we've got to go back to some of those thoughts, you know, that crossed our minds in the 60s, like ecology, like looking after each other rather than just being selfish, you know.
This is where it'll happen tomorrow night. It won't be the Beatles, but it'll be the nearest thing to them. A concert that'll bridge the generation gap and evoke memories from 3 different decades. Bob McNeil, 3 National News.
More unknown. Now for a history lesson. The last time he came here, he was 21 years old, and now he's 50. Back then he came here with the Beatles. They were the Mop Tops, the Fab Four. They put an end to the short back and sides. The fans blocked the traffic. You know how it went back in the early 60s. They laid siege at their hotel rooms and they screamed so loud you couldn't hear the music. Not that it mattered, really. Paul McCartney is back, ready once again to be an albeit older, greyer audience. This has been written at a very late stage on a Friday night. You must apologise. Ready once again to be to rock an albeit older, greyer audience. Thank you. Ready to... Thank you. Goodbye. Here's McCartney.
It's a long time ago now, but the Maori welcome and rubbing noses is hard to forget. In the 60s, it was a kind of phenomenon, you know, the Beatles thing, and so the reaction was like a wall of seagulls, really. It just, you couldn't hear anything, it was just a big noise. Now people sort of cheer and clap more at the end of the songs and tend to sort of listen during the songs a bit.
Do you miss that kind of run where you had where nearly every song you released went to #1? Do you miss that?
No, not really. As I say, you know, I've been really very lucky when you think about it. This is 30 years since I came here, and we're doing a bigger show than we did last time. We like played in a village hall in Christchurch last time. It was like really little, you know. And so we don't have the kind of hysteria anymore, but we have many more people these days come to our shows.
What about you yourself? Is there anywhere in the world you can go where you're anonymous?
Yeah, there are some places, actually. I go to Jamaica on holiday, and I'm never recognised there. In fact, I went to, we went round a little stall like in a village market, and there's a lady there, and we were just buying something off her, some fruit or something, and she just got talking. She said, "Are you American?" I said, "No." "British?" She said, "Oh, you are a subject too." So I'm just a subject in Jamaica.
Do you miss that in your normal life back in Britain?
No, I think, you know, I really don't have any regrets. When I think about it, I've been very, very lucky because people like Stevie Wonder, or more particularly someone like Michael Jackson, have been stars since they're about 8 or 9. Now, you know, that would have meant I'd miss out on life, but we didn't make it till we were all like 18, 19. So we'd had a lot of ordinary life. We'd had enough of it by the time we got famous. You know, we were raring to, #1, get a bit of money, because, you know, none of us had ever seen that. And, you know, then a bit of fame and stuff. And I think coming to us a little bit later, it was a bit easier to handle.
Is that how you kept yourself sane, really, having that normal background?
Yeah. I think I'm reasonably sane anyway for the business I'm in.
Paul, did you ever meet the fellow at Decca who refused to give the Beatles a contract in the very early days?
No, I never met him actually, no, but oh, he did feel sick after turning the Beatles down. Actually, the story was he met George Harrison at a kind of cocktail party, and he said, "Know any good bands?" He said, "I've just turned the Beatles down, you know any good bands?" George said, "Yeah, there's this group called the Rolling Stones." And he signed the Stones, so he came out all right in the end.
Your marriage is very close too. You have a marriage in which your partner not only lives with you but works with you. What's been the secret of your marriage to Linda, do you think?
People ask me that, you know. I've no idea, actually. We've spent a lot of time together, Linda and I. We've hardly been... We're not those couples who sort of, you know, she lives in the city, he lives in the country or whatever. We hardly see each other. I think we've hardly ever spent a night apart, so we must like each other. Suffer that, mustn't we? But we've got a lot in common. We've got a lot of interests in common. We've got 4 kids in common. And, you know, we've been lucky.
What was the worst thing, the very worst thing about being a Beatle?
About being a Beatle? I don't know, really. There's not an awful lot wrong with it. I think I'd better go now. Cheers, thank you.
Well, I bet the bank managers didn't mind it either, once they got rid of the funny managers milking all the money. You know what I mean? I'm not sure. There was a very big vegetarian message, too, from Paul McCartney today. I'm not sure that helps the New Zealand farmer, which, of course, should provoke some intense correspondence, to which I look forward. Letters Holmes this week.
We'll be getting ready to twist and shout over the weekend. Paul McCartney, of course, is world famous as a musician, and he's also something of a stayer. He and Linda McCartney have been married a long time. We know almost everything you need to know about Paul, so tonight we thought we'd give Linda a chance to have her say. Dylan Tate asked the questions.
Yes, he's back. Macca's back. The man who wrote a soundtrack for the world in the 60s is back. Like McCartney is his wife, Linda. She loved her. It's not easy playing in Paul McCartney's backup band, but she's hanging in there.
I'm much more confident now, because I've had all these years of playing.
I mean, you're happy up there, aren't you?
Exactly. I am.
I mean, whenever I've seen her, I thought, well, you know, maybe she's not a performing sort of person. I wondered, well...
No, it's not in my blood. I'm not, no, I'm not a showbiz person. I'm not. You're right. I'm not. I'm more a sort of photographer and more of a voyeur. I sort of like looking rather than being looked at. But having done it for a long time now, I'm into it.
And she's not just a musician, she's also a famous rock photographer. A woman who witnessed the 60s, saw the 60s as a photographic assignment.
I love doing it. I love taking the pictures. You know, I'm not a trained photographer. I do it for the love. And I mean, I know about as much now about this camera as I did 20, almost 30 years ago. I sort of guess, like if I was taking a picture of you right now, I'd sort of guess, well, 60, 125. I'll do 60 at 2.8. And then I'll just go like that, and I'll go like that, and that's the picture.
And I could be in the next book.
You could be. Or you could be in the next rubbish pile, who knows?
And one thing the McCartneys are serious about, being vegetarians. Linda's got best-selling books all over the world. And recently she sent a rocket to the Prime Minister of Australia because he has a pig farm.
So I just said to him, I was only, you know, sort of going to his heart and saying, why don't you change? Why don't you be a real good leader?
RPM eats potatoes, so...
But he's a farmer, I hear now. Isn't he a sheep farmer? Because all these sheep, we could be growing grain and vegetables, and the sheep could have little smiles on their face.
Would you have a
and
spare
use them
book
for the
him?
wool. Pardon?
Spare book for him, maybe?
Yes, definitely. Do you know him?
Well, not as well as I'd know people in the music business.
But if I give it to you, will you pass it on to him?
I'll pass it on to him, there you
It
are.
can't hurt his kids. You know, a lot of kids are going veggie, so his kids know.
Linda and Paul have got 4 children, and last week they celebrated their 24th wedding anniversary.
24 years.
I mean, that's
A long
truly
time.
amazing, isn't it?
Well, it is amazing, because I think, you know, living with, it's hard enough living with yourself. Then you go and live with somebody else, and it's the opposite sex. That's even harder. From different countries, different outlooks in life, but we got something going for us.
I mean, did you work hard at it, or was it just sort of happen? You get up every morning and it's...
No, it's
Paul
not
saying
all
you're
bliss.
there?
It's not all bliss like everybody thinks. Oh, you have such an idyllic life. I'm so envious of you. Oh, it's life. We all know about life. So we have our ups and downs, but we love each other.
She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, yeah, yeah. She loves you, yeah, 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 yeah.
Oh, nothing like a bit of twist and shout to end the program for the night and for the week.
Western Province lose to Auckland. And in the neighbouring Big Top, Metallica performed to 12,000 heavy metal fans, some from as far away as... Police arrested 30 people for drunkenness and disorderly behaviour. Today at Western Springs, they made final preparations for the man once asked by his child if he'd been in another band before Wings. 60,000 people are expected at tonight's Paul McCartney concert. By lunchtime, they were queuing outside. One man came from Australia to see his 10th Paul McCartney concert.
I've seen 1 concert in Perth, 2 Melbourne, 1 Adelaide, 5 Sydney.
And if that wasn't...
In Auckland, Beatles fans may have grown up, but they haven't grown out of Paul McCartney. More than 60,000 people filled Western Springs Stadium last night for McCartney's one-off New Zealand concert, and while it may have lacked the fanaticism of the 60s Beatlemania, there was no shortage of enthusiasm.
Paul McCartney rising to the occasion with a Beatles tune to send the audience reeling from the start.
She said, baby, it's understood. Working for peanuts is all very fine, but I can show you better time.
The last time McCartney graced the stage in New Zealand, he wasn't alone. The Liverpool lads were here in the heyday of Beatlemania. Nearly 30 years later, their fans remain loyal. Christine, Winkle and Annette are three Kiwis who not only remember the Beatles concert, but will never forget the stir they created by stealing past security to meet the Fab Four in Wellington. They made headlines in those days. Today, their escapades are no less spectacular. Last night, the three were given the chance to meet Paul McCartney.
It was Paul McCartney. And it was just fabulous. And then to go and listen to the concert and hear him sing.
Well, it brought him to life, really. You've seen him for so many years in pictures. And it was like he'd suddenly come in colour because he had this lovely denim shirt on and he just looked so lovely and natural. And looked at us and spoke to us, wanted to talk to us.
The man who wrote himself into music history by the time he was 25 is now 50. Asked about the Beatles reforming, he says it took 20 years to sort out the Beatles' legal problems. Today, Paul McCartney's simply moved on.
It's been exciting. It was standing room only at Auckland's Western Springs last night as Paul McCartney took about 60,000 Beatles fans on a magical history tour. Dylan Tate joined the crowds for the former Mop Top's only New Zealand concert.
Yes, Macca's back. 24 years wed now and with 4 children. But for the old fans, the mood is definitely yesterday when all their troubles seem so far away. Just a few thousand caught the Beatles' Auckland gig in '64. Well, they're back for more, and they've got a few friends with them. Suddenly, he was among us. The man who wrote a soundtrack for the '60s. New songs, people take them or leave them. The nostalgia bells really clang for the old favourites. It was 2.5 hours of high tech, something old, something new, and something else. 60,000 people agreeing on something.
It was absolutely fantastic.
Thanks.
Oh, it was fantastic. Oh, very fantastic.
Magic, fantastic.
It was fantastic.
Yeah, worth it.
Yes, would have paid $100. He would have paid $100.
Dylan Tate, One Network News.